Good morning, everybody. Oh, excuse me. Hi, it's Elizabeth Granice McLaughlin for Resistance Live on the 5th of November, 2019. Wow. Okay, so let me just say first things first to get this out of the way. It is election day. Everybody should go vote. Go vote. Go vote. Go vote. Your local elections really matter. They matter particularly this year in Virginia and Kentucky, but no matter where you are, please go vote. It's not a participatory democracy unless you participate in it. There are substantial things happening in Virginia today, could flip the entire Virginia legislature. Kentucky's got a governorship up that's really big. Pennsylvania's got an important election today. Everybody should just, Florida, get out there and vote. Get out there and vote. Okay, please. If you have not yet gotten out there to vote, please do it, and do it before the polls close tonight. Okay. Other thing I just want to mention really quickly that we discussed a little bit yesterday is this. We have decided that our Activist Leader Bootcamp Rise, which we have run 7 times since 2017, is going to be in its last incarnation starting next Monday. You have until Friday at 8 p.m. Pacific to register for Rise. We've trained more than 625 people in this course already. We really would like to kind of get to a nice round 1,000 before we actually are done, which is not out of the question. So if you're interested in learning how to really use your activism for good heading into 2020 and how to find your voice and use it for change and how to really decide the issues that matter the most to you and where to direct your energy, we would love to have you join us in the very last cohort of Rise. Which starts Monday. The registration, as I said, is open until 8 p.m. Pacific Friday night, GaiaLeadershipProject.com/rise. Okay, so as I said, again, local elections today. Please go vote. If you have not yet voted, go vote. Go vote if there is a local election in your state. Again, very important. Virginia, Kentucky, Pennsylvania, Florida. Lots of other important elections happening around the country today. All right. Let's see. I was like debating where to start today. You know, like there's a bunch of like really curious breaking news. Let's start with this. The first 2 transcripts of depositions taken in the Trump-Ukraine case were released yesterday, Yovanovitch and McKinley. Yovanovitch's transcript is quite the thing. And the House Intel did something really smart here, which is they released a summary of her transcript with quotes, as well as the transcript itself. The summary was designed to really draw attention to the most significant parts of the deposition, so you don't have to read the whole thing. So let me just give you a couple of highlights here. Yovanovitch was threatened. I mean, it's just amazing when you read this in real time that the Republicans still think they have a leg to stand on with this stuff. She was threatened in real time by a member of the State Department who said that the president could no longer guarantee her security because she tried to stop him from getting Ukraine to interfere in our election, and that she needed to get on the next plane home, and that she continued to be fearful about her own security at the hands of the president's refusal to guarantee her protection. I mean, you know, like there were a lot of people yesterday when I was tweeting about this who were saying, you know, the whole thing reads like it's like he's acting like a mafia boss. And it's true. You know, Pompeo also said that he was having problems with the president in terms of Yovanovitch and he couldn't guarantee her job. So this scheme, you know, of retaliation against a U.S. ambassador to one of, you know, one of the most important ambassadorships that the U.S. has, because she refused to go along with the president's scheme to try to get Ukraine to dig up dirt on his political rival or to create it, because really that's what he wanted, was for them to manufacture dirt. And he had her removed as a result. It's really bad. I mean, and you know, I will just say that, you know, threatening the safety and the security of a U.S. ambassador because she won't participate in your criminal conspiracy in and of itself is enough to get you impeached. There were other disclosures in there as well. Things that Sondland said, that she should tweet her support for the president if she wanted to keep her job. That, you know, the various disclosures leading up to her removal. By the way, the other thing that's really interesting about the Yovanovitch transcript is that it shows that this scheme goes all the way back to, and I know there's disputes about how early it really goes back, that there are some arguments that it might go all the way back to 2016 or 2015. But for purposes of where we sit today, Yovanovitch's evidence, her testimony, shows that this scheme to try to get Ukraine to interfere in the 2020 election goes all the way back to the beginning of this year, like way before May, like into like March So there's quite a lot to come on this. And the other thing is that today we have been told to expect the transcripts of Sondland, who was the U.S. ambassador to the EU, who, by the way, we know participated in all of this corruption and was the person who told Yovanovitch that she should tweet her support of the president, but also from Volker. So we are expecting quite a bit more of these sort of explosive disclosures coming out of the deposition transcripts of witnesses today. So more to come on that. Other things related to Ukraine. We knew this was going to happen yesterday, but 4 White House witnesses did not show up to testify yesterday. There are indications that additional ones are not showing up today. A number of you had a question about, like, why aren't they doing anything? You know, like, why is the House not holding them in contempt or sending the sergeant at arms out to arrest them? Why aren't there at this moment in time, like, sanctions? Well, those of you who watched the broadcast for some time know that to get court-ordered sanctions, you actually have to file a lawsuit in federal court in the District Court of Columbia to fine them. There is inherent contempt power that, you know, allows for fines and sanctions by the House if there is a defiance of subpoenas. You know, the House leadership is choosing not to do that. And it's a really good question why. It's not something that I have particularly been in favor of. Those of you who have been watching here for a while know that I was, like, ranting about this earlier in the year with regard to Don McGahn and others refusing to show up to testify about their stated experiences as reported in the Mueller report. So, you know, it's a good question. And, you know, frankly, one of the problems here is that if there's no pushback, you know, you all have heard me say this before, if there's no pushback against people who are breaking the law, then they will continue to do it and they will go further. You know, again, I will remind you all, the president is a predator. So as with many predators, he crosses a line and waits to see whether or not there's a consequence. And then he'll cross another line and wait to see whether or not there's a consequence. And then he'll cross another line. You give the man an inch, he'll take a mile. So I am not particularly pleased. Again, this is no surprise to longtime viewers. I'm not particularly pleased about the fact that the House doesn't seem to be doing anything in response to this. The only thing that I can think about here is that they have made a strategic decision. And, you know, by the way, Adam Schiff has voiced an aspect of this, that it looks better, in their view, to not throw the witnesses in jail and just to use the inference that they would have testified adversely to the president. The witnesses who are defying subpoenas would have testified adversely to the president. There's nothing wrong, by the way, with assuming that inference. The other thing here is that it could very well lead to another separate article of impeachment. Because, you know, I'll remind you all that one of the Nixon counts of impeachment, had he been impeached, he resigned before the vote was taken, included instructing witnesses to not comply with congressional investigations. So, you know, it's not as though there's not likely to be any consequence here. You know, and I'll add, you know, one of the people who defied yesterday's subpoena is an attorney. He could be disbarred for doing that. Again, this is the deputy counsel for the NSC. But, you know, I will just let you all know, again, one of the things to remember here is that the process of justice, and I hate to say this now because I'm so disappointed by the fact that they just didn't start, like, locking people up when they started defying subpoenas earlier in the year. But it does take time to get these things done if you're moving through a court proceeding. You know, the Mazars subpoena, which, again, is something that we've been trying to get compliance on for a while now, is on an extremely fast track. This is the subpoena from the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, not the one, by the way, that was litigated in the DC District Court. That's been on an extremely fast track, and it's just now gotten to this out of the Second Circuit in a month. So, you know, again, unless the House decides that they're going to take a really radical action here and lock up people who are not complying with subpoenas, which they can do, you know, they're going to go to federal court, and it's going to take some time. I'm not happy with it strategically. Again, like, I'm not endorsing it. I'm not saying it's a good way of handling this. I don't think it is. But they're clearly making some strategic decisions behind the scenes about how it's going to look. You know, and again, some of this has to do with the fact that very clearly Pelosi and Schiff want this to look like an inquiry that is not quote unquote a political witch hunt, where the evidence is being gathered systematically and carefully. And, you know, perhaps the judgment call that's being made is that locking up, you know, someone in the executive branch who fails to comply with the subpoena would make it look like it was that. I don't think it would, but, you know, I mean, they're obviously making decisions about this behind the scenes. So that's that, and again, I'm not going to tell you that I agree with it because I don't. One of my concerns about where we are right now as a democracy is that, if you're unwilling to comply with the rule of law, then all the dominoes can fall for purposes of the democracy. So in any event, that brings us to another question related to the law, which is like, what happens if the Supreme Court says the Manhattan DA has to get Trump's taxes and he decides not to turn them over? Well, let me say this. The sanctions on Trump as a result of that could be quite severe. And meaning that, like, if he stops, now remember, the subpoena that's being litigated in that case is for an accounting firm that has his tax returns. So fundamentally, it's their decision whether or not to turn them over. If he interferes with their compliance with a Supreme Court order, he will be prosecuted. He could be prosecuted for that. He could be prosecuted by the Manhattan District Attorney. There's no bar on indicting a sitting president in New York City courts. Again, some of this is going to require the right procedural steps to be taken. But if the president is ordered by the Supreme Court, and it's not the president, reminder, if Mazars is ordered to turn over those tax returns and the president interferes in that relationship to try to stop it, he can then be prosecuted for obstruction of justice under New York state law. So it is not in his interest to do that. We all know that, again, those of you who watched for a really long time know Tish James, Attorney General of New York. She was the public advocate for a very long time when I lived there. I'm a long-term fan of Tish. She's amazing. First Black woman Attorney General of the state of New York. She is not going to let this go. I have more faith in Tish James than I do in anybody in the DOJ right now, frankly. Again, remember, we have to watch how this plays out. But I want to reiterate that I don't see any way that the president gets away scot-free. And I've been saying that for quite some time. There's so many ongoing investigations, so many new litigations against him. I mean, E. Jean Carroll just sued him yesterday for defamation arising out of the fact that she, said that he raped her and he defamed her in exchange. The ongoing litigation, the ongoing criminal investigations, the ongoing pursuit of justice here is happening on so many fronts, it's hard to keep track at this point. For the rest of his days, he's either going to be prosecuted or people are going to be coming after him in civil court. So, those of you who are worried about this, just, rest assured that, there's enough going on that he's not going to be able to escape all of it entirely. All right. Roger Stone's trial starts today. And many of you asked, like, what are we expecting out of this? Well, one of the things that we're expecting out of it is that there's going to be some public testimony that previously was only provided before the grand jury that indicted Roger Stone. And the expectations are, by the way, that some of that testimony will be relevant to the potential impeachment of the president. Roger Stone, as an operative for the Trump campaign and as sort of like a shadow advisor to the president, was involved in a lot of really shady stuff, not to mention like threats against witnesses who were potentially cooperating in the Mueller investigation. There's a lot that will potentially be disclosed in this trial. And again, we won't know it until we know it. There are reporters sitting in the courtroom. Reminder, in federal court, there are no cameras. No TV cameras are allowed in federal court. So we will wait for transcripts. We'll get all of those wonderful dramatic readings from Rachel Maddow, no question. And we'll wait for the reports from the reporters who are actually inside the courtroom. But my bet is that there will also be some disclosures coming out of this trial, which is likely to take, 2, 3, maybe 4 weeks to get to a jury, that will be quite relevant, hopefully, to the knowledge base and the evidence that exists against the president. Okay. One of you asked another question, which is relevant from a strategic standpoint on impeachment, about why nothing is happening to other members of the administration. Nothing is happening, I'm putting in quotes, because that's not exactly what's going on. So, one of the things that I just want to make clear to all of you is that there are no limits on what the Congress is doing right now from the standpoint of the impeachment investigation as to other witnesses. In fact, there's been some relatively significant breaking news over the last 24 hours or so about what Pence knew and when he knew it with regard to Ukraine. I will remind you all that it's not like this all ends if the president is impeached and removed. There can be impeachment proceedings initiated against other appointed officials. Now, granted, the whole cabinet turns over when the president turns over if they're not invited to stay. But could other people be prosecuted? Could the attorney general be prosecuted? Could the House start impeachment proceedings against everyone involved in Ukraine, which, by the way, right now is 6 senior officials inside the White House. That's not including lower level staff. Yes, they could. They could try to impeach all of them at once. So the idea that nothing is happening is not quite right. There's been a lot of evidence introduced so far. We learned about a lot of it yesterday, for instance, with regard to Pompeo's participation in this criminal conspiracy. We know already quite a bit about Attorney General Barr's participation in this criminal conspiracy. Mulvaney is implicated. We have, obviously Pence participating in conversations with the president of Ukraine after the president threatened him in that phone call on July 25th. We have very significant depth at this point of criminality inside the executive branch. And the thing I want to remind you all of is that while justice will take its time to work its magic on those folks, the thing that matters the most right now is getting the president out of power. And again, he announced yesterday the formal withdrawal of the U.S. from the Paris Accords. Like, the whole planet is going to be like a burnt husk if he's not removed from office, and we change all of this as quickly as possible. So, we have to stay focused on the strategic reasons for getting the president out of office first. We can get to work on everybody else simultaneously. We can get to work on everybody else thereafter. But, the reality of where we find ourselves is that as long as he has the power that he has right now, the potential loss of life and damage to the planet and damage to our economy and the rollback of civil rights and the detention of people in U.S. concentration camps does not stop. So we have to have our priorities in order, in other words. And, I personally feel like the priorities are where they should be right now from the perspective of what's happening in this investigation. I wish it was faster, but I think the priorities are right. Okay. Last things for today, I'm going to say it again. Please vote in your local elections. Very big elections today in Virginia, Kentucky, Pennsylvania, Florida, and elsewhere in the country. Virginia in particular, this is a harbinger of what's to come because the entire control of that state's legislature hangs in the balance today. And you will remember that in the last election, it came down to 1 vote. So please, your vote really matters today. Get out there and vote in your local elections. Really important. Last thing I want to mention is that as we announced yesterday, this incarnation of our Activist Leader Bootcamp Rise will be the last time we run this program. We've run it 7 times since 2017. If you are looking for ways to take your activism to the next level heading into 2020, how to find your voice and use it for change, how to decide on your issues and how you're going to apply your time and your energy to make a difference and make the world a better place and advocate for a real shift in the way this country is run, please join us. Registration we extended it. We left it open a little bit longer once we decided this was the last time we were going to run it. It's open until 8 p.m. Friday, Pacific time. GaiaLeadershipProject.com/rise. I would love to see as many of you as possible in that program. All right. Much love. Mwah! Bye.